Abstract thinking is a really wonderful art to be able to learn. And the ability to do abstract thinking is one of the things that separates us from lower art forms. And if you look at art, if you're an artist, the ability to think in an abstract way, to picture something like a scene, a beautiful lake or something, and then be able to come up with an abstract painting of that is so creative and very artistic. And then in different ways we're able to use that abstract thinking in technology, in creating all the things that we see around us. All of creativity seems to be based on abstract thinking, the ability to look at something and say, if a bird can fly through the air, why can't a man fly through the air? And then as you start to think abstractly and you look and you extrapolate from that different methodologies, you come up with wonderful inventions. The problem with abstract thinking is it tends to take you out of the present moment. And I guess in the awakening that's going on today, of course it's been going on for a long time, but probably because of the media and even the ability to do things like this, we're able to share experiences more and more about how living in the present moment, being in the present moment can add so much to your life. Well, how did it get taken away? Well, it got taken away through abstract thinking, unfortunately. And that's the problem with the art of abstract thinking. We take it too far. So if I'm having a problem with my wife and she and I are having an argument, instead of just being present and feeling what's going on inside of me, feeling my heart racing and the stories going around in my head and all that sort of thing, when I'm reacting to her, this whole virtual reality is kicking off inside of me. Very abstract. You know, the whole concept of abstract means that we're taking what is and we're abstracting some kind of meaning from that. It's a derivative. And in derivative thinking, it takes us away from the present moment, because I can be sitting here and enjoying the peace of my surroundings, even in an argument or a discussion with my wife. I can be there and feel what's going on inside of me, feel what's going on inside of her, come to some degree of empathy and feel my way through the situation just by being very, very present with her. But unfortunately, that abstract thinking, that tendency to immediately jump into the abstract, takes me out of the present moment. So what happens in the abstractions, in my abstract thinking, I look at what she just said to me and I say, you can't say that to me. I say this in my mind. I react to her and I jump back with some retort that pushes her buttons, and now we're both pushing each other's buttons. And where do we go? If you've ever gotten in one of those arguments with somebody that you live with, and at some point it's escalated and you say, how did we get here? This was such a little thing, and how did we get here? Well, we got here through abstract thinking and through moving through the abstraction. Alfred Korzybski, who is known as the father of the field of general semantics, and general semantics sort of eventually gave way to neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. And if you take the roots of what Korzybski talked about years ago, he talked about layers of abstraction within our brains and how we see the world through our eyes, which registers in the visual cortex a whole lot of little signals like bits and bytes, like ones and zeros, almost impossible to determine, light and dark. And so in the first layer of abstraction, which he called the process layer, we sort of start this process of making sense out of all these inputs of quote reality that are coming into our heads. And as we move through layers of, we get to the object layer where I can see something, and I can tell that it's an object. I can tell the difference between light and dark patterns, and I can see objects in front of me. And as we move through each layer, these layers of abstraction, we throw away unnecessary information about what's going on, and we abstract meaning from what we're seeing. So when I'm having this argument with my wife, I'm abstracting maybe that she's acting like a jerk and she has no right to talk to me this way. And in these higher levels of abstraction, now we're making inferences. And Korzybski talked about how at the inference layer of abstraction, we create stories. And those stories are what carry us into a world of abstract and out of the world of the present moment. They keep us from really being present. We get swept away. And of course the ego just loves to be swept away because it feels like it's in control and it's getting what it wants, and actually what it's doing is sabotaging my life. I tend to look at the ego as sort of this made-up being that I tend to call me, but it doesn't really represent me very well, and it often sabotages my life. So I have to be present in order to see this happening in real time. Otherwise, it'll carry me away into the world of abstraction. And so Peter Senge, who wrote the book The Fifth Discipline, took the concepts from Korzybski a little further, and he created what he calls the ladder of abstraction. And it's like we go up a ladder as our thinking races ahead out of the present moment into these conceptual states, these conceptual frameworks. We take little bits of information about what's going on, but we make assumptions, we make inferences, and each inference we make carries us further up the ladder. Well, that further up the ladder is further away from the present moment. And so we find ourselves in a virtual reality world that has very little to do with this one. Now, if you're a schizophrenic, you realize you've really gone up the ladder of abstraction a long way. Because every little thing that happens, you look at it and you interpret it as, well, that could be true. Well, if this is true, that could be true. So now people are talking to me out of the TV, and there's plots and things going on. And these abstractions, I have no ability to discern whether they're true or not. I just assume that they're true. And we would call this person schizophrenic, and maybe we would lock them up. But unfortunately, the same thing happens to all of us, and we're not locked up, and we're not schizophrenic. We're, quote, normal. But normal people live in an abstracted world. This creative thing that we are able to do, which other animals are unable to do, has gotten us into the fix that we're in. That keeps us from really enjoying life in the present moment, because we don't even have the ability to sense the present moment anymore. The abstraction has more of a concrete feeling to us than the present moment does and what's really happening. And so as it becomes more and more concrete and becomes the reality of our lives, we get swept away from living in the moment.